Good morning. It's 8:42. Ithaca's Morning News. Joining us from the campaign trail, Leslie Danks Burke, who's running for state senate in what could be the 53rd district, depending on how things work out. Good morning, Leslie.
Good morning, Joe.
You have run during the height of COVID. Now you're running in an election year that's strange for a different reason. How does that feel?
It is certainly chaotic, Joe. There's no doubt about it. But you have to stay the course in these times because that's how democracy keeps going, right? You take what gets thrown at you and you keep on standing up.
We're talking about redistricting. That's kind of what we were alluding to there in the beginning. There were maps drawn and then thrown out and then kind of allowed and then maybe thrown out again. With your campaign in full gear, where do you stand? What district are you seeking to represent as it looks now?
That's exactly the problem is I don't know. Just like candidates across the state, we don't know what district we're running in. And more than being a problem for us, it's a problem for voters. Goodness gracious, when voters don't know who their elected representatives are, that is a real danger to democracy. But yes, I technically live in the 58th district. Tompkins County was gerrymandered for the last 20 years, sliced up into three different Republican gerrymandered districts, and I live in what's called the 58th, which is a gerrymandered Republican district. The Democrats redrew those maps, created on paper for 3 months new districts. It looked like I'd be in the 53rd, but now that's been thrown out, and we don't know what the districts are.
Of course, this all began with the Independent Redistricting Commission made up of 5 Democrats and 5 Republicans, and I guess kind of like Congress, they couldn't decide or agree on anything. It got kicked up to Albany, which is under the control of the Democratic Party, and here we are with this big pot of confusing stew.
It's sure true, and I've been involved in advocacy work around the Southern Tier and Finger Lakes for 15 years. I have real deep policy experience standing up for jobs, farms, and schools in this area. And the entire area, about 14 counties huge, has been represented by the same incumbents for a very long time. It's Republican incumbents who've represented this whole area. And my view is things need to change. People are really struggling. Taxes are through the roof. The Republicans talk a good game about cutting property taxes, but they sure don't get the job done. And I aim to get in there, cut property taxes, and get the money back here to invest in our folks.
We're speaking with Leslie Danks Burke on Ithaca's Morning News. She is a state senate candidate. So when you're running for a district that technically right now, as you and I are talking, does not exist, how does that work on the campaign trail?
Well, what you have to do is you have to recognize that these lines that government bureaucracies draw are really not the important story. The important story is the voters and the people on the ground who aren't getting their needs met. And if you can keep that in mind as a candidate, then you go out and talk with folks over and over. And that's what I'm doing. I'm knocking on doors. I'm visiting with people over the phone. I'm meeting with people in Zoom groups. And across the board, no matter where they live in this huge region, I'm hearing the same story. We've been taught to settle here in the Southern Tier and Finger Lakes in central New York. We've been told this is the best it can be and we don't deserve any better. And that's a long story. That's not true. It can be so much better. This is a beautiful area. We have really hardworking people, and we just need to get somebody in there on the Senate floor who's going to fight for us.
You're not a stranger to running for office, so you've knocked on a lot of doors and you've had a lot of face-to-face conversations with potential constituents and Zoom conversations as well. What is the average person saying to you about this redistricting battle that is continuing to go on?
I think we're in a reality now where everything is so upended that people really take it in stride. Look at our kids. From day to day through the 2 years of pandemic, a lot of kids didn't know whether they were getting on the bus that day to go to school. Parents like me would get an email in the morning saying whether school was open or not and what the rules were. we've really learned over the last 2 years to accept chaos at a level that I think we wouldn't have accepted a couple of years ago. And what I'm finding is that gives people a certain level of resilience. So I guess that's the optimistic way to look at it. Is people do have confidence that this will get sorted out. A couple of days ago, I would say to folks, I don't know who I'm running against. I don't know who the voters are, and I don't know the election date. Well, as of 2 days ago, we now know the election date. So that's 1 out of 3, Joe. We're making progress.
And eventually, before the election, maybe there'll be a final answer for what the district will look like.
Well, there's got to be. And again, it's a disservice to citizens. It's a disservice to the people who really own this democracy. We, the voters, are in charge here, and the elected officials report to us. And when it does take this long, regardless of who's finger pointing at who and who says who's to blame, it has taken a year too long for New York to figure out where voters are going to vote. And we are very close to Election Day. In fact, the Election Day had to get postponed from June to now it's August 23rd. I'm glad we know the date. But goodness gracious, this is a disservice to democracy, and we need to stand up and call it out.
Leslie Danks Burke running for state senate against someone in some district. That's kind of where we are now.
And I'm running against whoever I end up with, because no matter where it is, we've been let down, and so I'm standing up to fight.
I love a puzzle. Leslie, thanks a lot for your time. We'll talk to you again soon.
Take good care, Joe.